The gunshot echoed through the Montana wilderness as Logan Wright squinted against the setting sun. Blood trickled down his arm, but he barely noticed, his attention fixed on the distant cabin where Helena Dawson was tending her small farm alone. It had been 3 months since her husband's death, and the vultures were circling both the kind that wore badges and the kind that carried guns. The year was 1878, and Sweetwater Valley had transformed from a quiet settlement into a mining boomtown practically overnight. Land that was once worthless suddenly held promise of silver and gold beneath its surface. Including Helena's land, Logan tucked his revolver back into its holster and mounted his horse. He wasn't supposed to be this close to the Dawson property. Sheriff Benton had made that abundantly clear when he'd posted the notice banning Logan from coming within a mile of the place. But Logan had spotted 3 riders heading toward Helena's cabin, men who worked for Victor Holloway, the railroad man who'd been trying to buy up every piece of land between here and the Missouri River. As he approached the cabin, he heard shouting. Helena stood on her porch, shotgun in hand, facing down the 3 men who remained mounted on their horses. "Final offer, Mrs. Dawson," said the man in the center. "Mr. Holloway is being more than generous. $500 for this worthless patch of dirt." "This land feeds me and my daughter," Helena replied, her voice steady despite the tremor Logan could see in her hands. "It's not for sale at any price." The leader leaned forward in his saddle. "Your husband understood business. Shame he's not around to talk sense into you." Logan guided his horse into the clearing. 3 armed men threatening a widow, that what passes for business these days, Ellis. The men turned, hands instinctively moving toward their guns when they recognized him. "Right," Ellis spat. "Sheriff said you were to stay clear of this property." "Funny thing about that," Logan replied, his voice casual despite the tension thrumming through him. "I never was good at following orders, especially unjust ones." Helena's eyes widened with recognition. She'd seen Logan around town. Of course, Sweetwater wasn't big enough for strangers, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries at church or the general store. "This doesn't concern you," Ellis said. "Ride on." Logan remained where he was. "Mrs. Dawson asked you to leave. I suggest you do so." "Or what?" Ellis laughed. "You'll take on all 3 of us. Even you're not that good with that 6-shooter, right?" Logan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe not, but I reckon I can take at least 2 of you down before you get me. Question is, which one of you wants to be the lucky survivor who has to explain to Holloway why his errand failed?" The standoff lasted another tense moment before Ellis signaled to his companions. "We'll be back, Mrs. Dawson, with the sheriff." After they rode off, Logan dismounted, wincing as his boots hit the ground. The bullet graze on his arm was beginning to throb. "Mr. Wright," Helena said, lowering her shotgun. "I appreciate the assistance, but Sheriff Benton won't be a problem today," Logan finished for her. "He's escorting a prisoner to Helena, won't be back until tomorrow." Helena noticed the blood on his sleeve. "You're hurt, it's nothing. Come inside, the least I can do is clean that wound." Her tone left no room for argument. Logan followed her into the modest cabin, ducking his head to avoid the low doorframe. A young girl of about 8 years looked up from where she sat at the table, slate and chalk in hand. "Mama, who's that man?" "This is Mr. Wright, Charlotte. He helped us with some trouble outside." The girl studied him with serious eyes. "Are you the man Mr. Thornton at the general store calls the fool, Charlotte?" Helena admonished, her cheeks flushing. Logan chuckled. "Probably. Folks in town have taken to calling me a lot of things lately." Helena gestured for him to sit while she gathered supplies to tend his wound. "Charlotte, please continue with your arithmetic while I help Mr. Wright." As Helena rolled up his sleeve and began cleaning the wound, Logan tried not to notice the gentle touch of her hands or the faint scent of lavender that clung to her skin. It had been over 2 years since his wife Sarah had passed from fever, taking their unborn child with her. He'd forgotten how comforting a woman's touch could be. "Why did you come?" Helena asked quietly. "You could have been killed." Holloway's men don't usually ride out to make peaceful offers, Logan replied. I was concerned. That doesn't explain why you were close enough to notice them coming. She applied a salve to his wound before wrapping it with a clean strip of cloth. The sheriff's orders were quite clear. Logan met her gaze. I've been patrolling the edges of your property since your husband died. Holloway has his eye on this land, and his methods of acquisition aren't always legal. Why would you risk the sheriff's wrath for me? We barely know each other. Logan's eyes flicked to Charlotte before returning to Helena. Your husband saved my life once. During a blizzard 3 winters ago, he found me half frozen on the trail and brought me to his hunting cabin. Stayed with me 2 days until the storm passed. Helena's hands stilled. He never mentioned that. Jacob wasn't one to boast about good deeds, but I owed him, still do. And that's the only reason. Her voice held a note he couldn't quite identify. Before Logan could answer, the sound of an approaching horse interrupted them. Helena moved to the window. It's Dr. Fairfield, she said, relief evident in her voice. The doctor entered moments later, a lanky man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He stopped short when he saw Logan. Right, didn't expect to see you here. His tone was neutral, but his expression showed concern. Sheriff finds out there'll be trouble. Just leaving, Doc, Logan replied, standing. Dr. Fairfield looked between them. Came to check on Charlotte's cough. How's our patient doing? While the doctor examined Charlotte, Logan moved toward the door. Thank you for your help, Mrs. Dawson. Helena followed him onto the porch. Mr. Wright, Logan, he corrected. Logan, she said, testing the name. I can't ask you to risk yourself for us. You didn't ask. He settled his hat on his head. I'll keep my distance so as not to cause you trouble, but I'll be watching Holloway's men. Why do they call you a fool? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Logan paused, a smile tugging at his lips. Because I stand against Holloway when everyone else bends, because I believe some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds are poor. His eyes met hers. Rest easy, Mrs. Dawson, you're not alone. As he rode away, Helena watched until he disappeared into the trees, wondering why her heart was beating so quickly. The following morning, Logan was repairing fence at the small ranch he'd built on the outskirts of Sweetwater when Sheriff Benton rode up, dust billowing behind his horse. Right. The sheriff's voice carried across the yard. Got something to discuss with you. Logan set down his tools and straightened, eyeing the lawman warily. Benton was Holloway's man, everyone knew it, but he wore the badge and that counted for something in these parts. Sheriff, Logan acknowledged. Thought you weren't due back until today. Got back late last night. Benton dismounted, his boots raising small clouds of dust as he approached. Heard an interesting story from Ellis Roper. Says you interfered with some business yesterday. If by business you mean threatening a widow and her child, then yes, I did. The sheriff's face reddened. You were ordered to stay away from the Dawson place. On what grounds? Last I checked, this was still America. A man can ride where he pleases on public trails. Don't get smart with me, Wright. Holloway's losing patience. Logan crossed his arms. Is that a threat, Sheriff? Benton stepped closer. It's a warning, from a lawman to a citizen. Holloway represents progress. The railroad's coming through, and that means prosperity for everyone. Everyone except those whose land gets stolen. No one's stealing anything. He's making fair offers. Logan laughed. Fair, 500 for land worth 10 times that once the railroad surveys are complete. That's not fair, that's robbery with a smile. The sheriff's hand moved to rest on his gun. You've been warned, Wright. Stay away from the Dawson woman. Or what? Logan challenged. You'll arrest me for being a good neighbor. I'll arrest you for whatever I need to. Benton's eyes narrowed. You've made enemies of powerful men, not smart. Wouldn't be the first time I've been called a fool. After the sheriff left, Logan's foreman Marcus Reeves emerged from the barn. The former Buffalo soldier had fought in the Civil War before heading west, and now ran Logan's small cattle operation with military precision. Trouble? Marcus asked. Nothing new, Logan replied. Holloway's still after Helena Dawson's land. Marcus nodded. That widow's sitting on prime real estate. Railroad's gonna want a straight shot through that valley. She deserves fair compensation at the very least. Fair ain't Holloway's way." Marcus hesitated. "Town's talking about you and the widow." Logan frowned. "What about us? Saying you've taken a shine to her, that you're a fool for getting involved. People talk too much." Marcus shrugged. "She's a fine woman, been through a lot, lost her husband, raising that girl alone. I'm honoring a debt to Jacob Dawson, nothing more." Marcus didn't look convinced. "If you say so, just be careful. Holloway doesn't like losing." Later that afternoon, Logan rode into town for supplies. Sweetwater had grown considerably in the 5 years since he'd settled there, transforming from a dusty crossroads into a proper town with a main street lined with businesses. The promise of the railroad had brought speculators, merchants, and fortune seekers from as far away as New York and Boston. As he tied his horse outside the general store, Logan noticed the stares and whispers that followed him. Word traveled fast in small towns. Inside, Thornton, the store owner, greeted him with wary courtesy. "Mr. Wright, what can I help you with today?" "Just the usual supplies, Edward," Logan replied, handing over his list. As Thornton gathered the items, the door opened, and Helena entered with Charlotte in tow. She stopped when she saw Logan, surprise registering on her face. "Mrs. Dawson," Logan tipped his hat. "Mr. Wright," she responded formally, though her eyes held a warmth that belied her cool tone. Charlotte beamed at him. "Hello, Mr. Wright. Dr. Fairfield said my cough is much better. Good to hear, Miss Charlotte." Logan smiled at the girl. Helena moved past him to speak with Thornton, who immediately became overly solicitous, fetching items without her having to ask. Logan pretended interest in a display of pocket knives while listening to their conversation. "Your order's ready, Mrs. Dawson," Thornton was saying. "Though I must inform you that your account is approaching its limit." Helena's voice remained steady. "I understand. The harvest should be good this year, and I'll settle the balance then." Of course," Thornton replied, though his tone suggested doubt. "It's just business, you understand, times being what they are." Logan sensed rather than saw Helena's back stiffen with pride. "I've never failed to pay my debts, Mr. Thornton. No, indeed, it's just, well, a woman alone." Logan had heard enough. He approached the counter, laying down sufficient money to cover both his supplies and Helena's. "Put Mrs. Dawson's account in order," he told Thornton, "and extend her credit as needed." Helena turned to him, eyes flashing. "Mr. Wright, I cannot accept. It's not charity," he interrupted quietly. "It's an investment. Your farm produces the finest vegetables in the county. I'm merely ensuring my supply continues." Thornton looked between them, clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Wright, I'm not sure, is my money no good here?" Logan asked bluntly. "No, sir, I didn't mean good. Then we're settled." Logan gathered his purchases. To Helena, he added, "Mrs. Dawson, may I escort you and Charlotte home? I'm headed that direction anyway." Outside, once Charlotte was distracted examining a display in the milliner's window, Helena confronted him. "That was unnecessary. I don't need your charity." "It wasn't charity," Logan insisted. "Jacob would have wanted, please stop using my husband to justify your actions," Helena said sharply. Then, softer, "I'm sorry, that was unkind. I appreciate your help, but I need to stand on my own." Logan studied her face, the determination in her brown eyes, the proud set of her jaw. "I understand pride, Mrs. Dawson, but there's no shame in accepting help when it's offered honestly." "And is it?" she challenged. "Offered honestly? Or is there more to your sudden interest in my welfare?" Before Logan could answer, a commotion erupted down the street. A group of men on horseback were approaching Victor Holloway at their center, flanked by Ellis Roper and several other hired guns. Logan instinctively stepped between Helena and the approaching men. "Charlotte," he called without taking his eyes off Holloway, "come here, please." The girl hurried to her mother's side as Holloway reined in his horse directly in front of them. In his 50s, with iron gray hair and cold eyes, Holloway cut an imposing figure in his tailored suit, and polished boots Eastern refinement masking Western ruthlessness. Mrs. Dawson, Holloway removed his hat in mock courtesy. And Mr. Wright, I'm told you two have become acquainted. Mr. Holloway, Helena acknowledged with a stiff nod. Holloway's gaze lingered on Logan. Interfering in business negotiations, Wright, that's not neighborly. Neither is sending armed men to threaten a widow, Logan replied evenly. People had begun to gather on the boardwalk, watching the confrontation with undisguised interest. My men were merely delivering an offer, Holloway said smoothly. A generous one at that. He turned to Helena. Which remains open, Mrs. Dawson. $500, cash in hand, enough to start fresh somewhere more, suitable for a woman in your position. My position is that of a landowner, Mr. Holloway, Helena replied, and my answer remains no. Holloway's pleasant expression hardened. The railroad is coming through Sweetwater, Mrs. Dawson. Progress cannot be stopped. Your land will be required one way or another. Is that a threat? Logan asked. Merely a statement of fact. Holloway's eyes narrowed. You'd be wise to stay out of matters that don't concern you, Wright. I'd hate to see your investment go to waste. With that, Holloway replaced his hat and signaled his men to move on. As they rode away, Logan could feel the eyes of the townspeople on them. Everyone's watching, Helena murmured, her face flushed with embarrassment or anger. Logan couldn't tell which. Let them, he replied. You've done nothing wrong. Neither have you, yet they call you a fool. She met his gaze directly. Why do you oppose him when no one else will? Logan looked around at the familiar faces of Sweetwater good people, most of them, who had chosen the path of least resistance. Someone has to stand for what's right, even when it's difficult, especially then. A voice called from the crowd. Why don't you mind your own business, Wright? The railroad means money for everyone, another joined in. You're a fool to stand against Holloway. He'll crush you like a bug, Logan faced the crowd. Is this what we've become? A town that allows bullies to take what doesn't belong to them. That stands by while a widow is threatened. The railroad's coming whether we like it or not, called Mr. Peterson from the bank. Better to negotiate than fight. Negotiate, Logan laughed without humor. Is that what you call forcing people to sell for pennies on the dollar? That's not negotiation, that's extortion. Helena touched his arm. Please, Logan, not for me. The use of his first name caught him off guard. He looked down at her, at Charlotte clinging to her mother's skirts, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Let me take you home, he said quietly. As they left town, the whispers followed them like shadows. Over the next few weeks, tension in Sweetwater grew. Holloway increased pressure on the few remaining holdouts, including Helena. Water rights were suddenly disputed. Cattle from neighboring ranches mysteriously found their way onto her crops. The bank called in loans that had previously been in good standing. Through it all, Logan kept his distance as promised, but made his presence known. He established a regular patrol around the borders of her property, careful never to trespass, but visible enough that Holloway's men thought twice about causing trouble. What he hadn't anticipated was how often his thoughts would turn to Helena. Her courage in the face of mounting pressure impressed him. The graceful way she managed her farm and raised her daughter alone spoke of inner strength that went beyond mere survival. It was during one of his patrols that he spotted smoke rising from the direction of Helena's cabin. Without hesitation, Logan spurred his horse forward, caution forgotten as he galloped across her land. He found Helena and Charlotte battling a small fire in the barn with buckets of water. The blaze had caught in the hay storage and was spreading quickly. Get back. Logan shouted, dismounting in a fluid motion. He grabbed a bucket from Helena and ran inside, throwing water on the flames before they could reach the main support beams. Between the three of them, they managed to extinguish the fire before it consumed the structure. Though half the hay was lost and one wall was badly scorched, afterward they sat exhausted on the ground outside, faces streaked with soot. Charlotte had been sent to the pump to wash up. Thank you, Helena said, her voice hoarse from smoke. If you hadn't come when you did. What happened? Helena shook her head. I don't know. I was working in the garden when Charlotte spotted the smoke. Logan examined the charred section of the barn. This wasn't an accident. Someone set this fire. Holloway's men, Helena whispered. Most likely. Logan's jaw tightened. This has gone too far. I won't sell, Helena said fiercely. This land is all Charlotte and I have left of Jacob. Logan sat beside her. I understand, but your safety matters more than the land. Holloway's getting desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. Helena turned to face him. Why do you care so much? And don't tell me it's because of Jacob. There's more to it than that. Logan was silent for a long moment, struggling with words he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge even in the privacy of his own thoughts. When Sarah died, he began slowly. I thought I'd never care about anyone again. Didn't want to. It hurt too much. He looked out across Helena's farm at the fields Jacob had cleared by hand. Then I saw you standing against Holloway, refusing to be bullied or bought, and something woke up inside me. Helena's expression softened. Logan, I know it's foolish, he continued. You're still mourning Jacob. I'm the last person you need in your life. The town already thinks I'm crazy for opposing Holloway. And what do you think? She asked quietly. I think. Logan met her gaze. I think some things are worth being a fool for. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and possibilities neither dared voice. Finally, Helena stood. Charlotte and I will manage here tonight. You should go before the sheriff gets wind that you've been on my property. Logan nodded, understanding her need for distance. I'll send Marcus over tomorrow to help repair the barn. That's not necessary. It is, Logan insisted. Friends help friends, Helena, that's all this is. But they both knew it wasn't true. The next morning, Logan was splitting firewood behind his house when Marcus rode in with news. Sheriff's been asking questions in town, Marcus reported, dismounting, about you and Mrs. Dawson. Logan set down his axe. What kind of questions? Whether you've been seen at her place, whether she's been entertaining callers. The kind of questions that stir up trouble for a respectable widow. Anger flashed through Logan. Benton's trying to damage her reputation. Seems that way. Marcus hesitated. There's more. Holloway's bringing in professional gunmen from Denver. Word is he's tired of waiting for folks to sell willingly. How many? 3 that I heard about, including a man named Garrett Flynn. Logan stilled. Flynn was notorious in the territories, a hired killer who operated just within the bounds of the law, provoking victims into drawing first so he could claim self-defense. When? Train arrives tomorrow. Logan made his decision. I need you to go to Helena's place. Help her with that barn repair and keep an eye out. I'm riding into town. In Sweetwater, Logan headed straight for the sheriff's office. He found Benton at his desk, feet propped up, reading a newspaper. Right, the sheriff acknowledged without looking up. Come to surrender yourself for trespassing. Come to warn you, Logan replied. Holloway's bringing in gunmen. That got Benton's attention. He lowered his paper. What are you talking about? Flynn and 2 others, arriving tomorrow. Benton's expression revealed nothing. If Mr. Holloway wants to hire additional security, that's his business. Security. Logan's voice rose. Flynn's a killer for hire, and you know it. I know he's never been convicted of any crime, Benton corrected. Unlike some who think they're above the law, Logan leaned over the desk. This has gone beyond business, Sheriff. Holloway's men set fire to Helena Dawson's barn yesterday. That's a serious accusation. Got any proof? You know I don't. Benton smiled thinly. Then I suggest you stop spreading rumors about respectable businessmen. He stood. In fact, I should arrest you right now for trespassing on the Dawson property. Several witnesses saw you ride onto her land yesterday to put out a fire, so you admit you were there. Benton reached for his handcuffs. That's a clear violation of my order. Logan stepped back. This isn't about me breaking your unjust order. This is about Holloway using you to clear obstacles from his path, the obstacle being you and anyone else who stands up to him. Logan moved toward the door. Think about the oath you took, Benton. To uphold the law, not bend it for men with money. I'm warning you, Wright, Benton called as Logan reached the door. Stay away from the widow, or next time you'll leave in handcuffs. Logan spent the rest of the day making preparations. He visited Judge Harmon, the circuit judge who happened to be in town, and swore out an affidavit about the fire. He telegraphed the federal marshal in Helena about Holloway's increasingly aggressive tactics. And he spoke with Reverend Collins about organizing the townspeople to stand together against intimidation. As evening fell, Logan found himself drawn to the small church on the edge of town. He wasn't a particularly religious man, his faith had wavered after Sarah's death, but the quiet sanctuary offered a place to think. He was surprised to find Helena there, sitting alone in a pew near the front. She turned at the sound of his boots on the wooden floor. "Logan," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the empty church. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Nor I you," he replied, taking a seat in the pew behind hers. "Where's Charlotte?" With Mrs. Turner. She offered to watch her while I— Helena gestured vaguely. "I needed some peace." Logan nodded. "Marcus told me he helped with the barn." "He did. It's nearly repaired." She turned to face him. "He also told me about Flynn. I'm handling it." "How?" Helena's voice was sharp with worry. "By confronting professional killers. That's suicide, Logan." "I've spoken with Judge Harmon and telegraphed the federal marshal. Laws and marshals won't arrive in time." Her hands twisted in her lap. "Holloway means to force this issue now. He's already spreading rumors about us in town." Logan's jaw tightened. "What kind of rumors?" Helena's cheeks colored. "The kind that question a widow's virtue. Mrs. Peterson refused to speak to me at church yesterday. Charlotte came home from school crying because the other children said her mother was involved with the town troublemaker." "I'm sorry," Logan said softly. "This is my fault." "No," Helena shook her head fiercely. "It's Holloway's fault. He's trying to isolate me to make it impossible for me to stay." "Is it working?" Helena was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I wonder if I should just take his money and leave, start fresh somewhere else." "Charlotte deserves better than to be ostracized for my stubbornness." "It's not stubbornness to want to keep what's rightfully yours, isn't it?" She sighed. "Jacob's been gone for almost a year. Sometimes I wonder if I'm holding on to this land for him or for myself." Logan moved to sit beside her. "What do you want, Helena?" Truly, she looked at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I want peace. I want to raise my daughter without fear. I want—" She stopped, looking away. "What?" Logan pressed gently. "I want to stop feeling guilty," she whispered. "For still being alive when Jacob is gone, for wanting things he can no longer give me, for thinking about—" Her eyes met his briefly before darting away again. Logan's heart quickened. "Helena, I would never presume, I know." She stood abruptly. "I should go. Mrs. Turner expects me back." Logan rose as well. "Let me walk you." Outside, the setting sun painted the western sky in shades of orange and gold. They walked in silence through the quiet streets, each lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the Turner residence, Helena stopped. "Logan, whatever happens tomorrow when those men arrive, please be careful." "I will." She hesitated, then reached up to touch his cheek, her fingers cool against his skin. "The town calls you a fool for standing against Holloway, for caring about what happens to me. Maybe they're right." Logan covered her hand with his own. "Then I'll be the happiest fool alive." The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with emotion. Then Helena withdrew her hand. "Good night, Logan," she whispered before hurrying up the path to the Turner house. Logan watched until she was safely inside, then turned toward home, his mind made up. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring, but he would not back down. The train from Denver arrived precisely at noon the following day. Logan watched from across the street as 3 men disembarked Flynn, tall and lean with a pockmarked face, flanked by 2 younger guns whose eager expressions marked them as men with something to prove. Holloway greeted them personally, along with Sheriff Benton and Ellis Roper. After a brief conversation, the group headed toward the Sweetwater Hotel. Logan had positioned himself strategically. Judge Harmon stood nearby, as did Reverend Collins and several townspeople who had finally found their courage. They weren't many, but they were witnesses. Holloway. Logan called out, his voice carrying down the street. The group stopped. Holloway turned slowly, his expression one of practiced patience. "Mr. Wright, come to see our town's progress firsthand. Come to deliver a message," Logan replied, approaching steadily. "The federal marshal has been notified of your tactics. Judge Harmon has sworn affidavits from several citizens regarding threats and property damage." Holloway's smile didn't waver. Serious accusations, completely unfounded, of course. Logan stopped a few paces away. "The fire at the Dawson farm wasn't an accident, regrettable incident," Holloway said smoothly. "But accidents happen, especially when inexperienced hands manage complex operations." Flynn stepped forward, studying Logan with cold eyes. "This the troublemaker you mentioned, Mr. Holloway?" "Mr. Wright has strong opinions about progress," Holloway replied, "and a particular interest in the Dawson widow's affairs." The insinuation hung in the air, deliberately provocative. "My interest is in justice," Logan stated clearly, for the benefit of the growing crowd. "Mrs. Dawson's land is hers to sell or keep as she chooses, not to be taken through intimidation or force." Holloway's false civility slipped. "That land will be part of the railroad right-of-way. The route has already been approved by the territorial governor." "Then pay her what it's worth," Logan countered. 10 times your insulting offer. The offer is more than fair for unimproved farmland." "We both know that's not true." Flynn's hand moved casually to rest on his gun. "Seems to me you're interfering in legitimate business, mister." Logan kept his own hands visible and away from his weapon. "There's nothing legitimate about arson or threatening widows." "Careful, Wright," Benton warned. "That's slander. It's the truth, and everyone here knows it." Logan addressed the crowd directly. "Holloway wants us to believe the railroad will bring prosperity. But what good is prosperity if it's built on injustice? If we allow him to bully one widow today, who will be next tomorrow?" Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Logan could see uncertainty in some faces, conviction beginning to form in others. "Enough of this," Flynn interrupted. His hand now rested openly on his pistol. "Mr. Holloway didn't bring me here to listen to speeches." "No," Logan agreed. "He brought you here to kill me." The blunt statement caused gasps among the crowd. Holloway's face darkened with anger. "That's absurd," he snapped. "Mr. Flynn is employed for security purposes only." Logan kept his focus on Flynn. "Tell me, Flynn, how many men have you provoked into drawing first so you could claim self-defense? How many widows have you created for men like Holloway?" Flynn's eyes narrowed. "You're mighty bold for a man standing alone." "He's not alone," came a voice from behind Logan. Helena walked forward, Charlotte at her side, to stand next to Logan. Marcus appeared from the direction of the livery stable, positioning himself on Logan's other flank. "Mrs. Dawson," Holloway acknowledged, his tone condescending, "this is no place for a woman and child." "This is precisely where I should be," Helena replied firmly, "when men plot to steal my home." Judge Harmon stepped forward. "Mr. Holloway, I've reviewed the documentation regarding the railroad right-of-way. While the general route has been approved, specific parcels have not been officially designated for seizure under eminent domain." "Meaning," Logan translated, "you can't legally take her land without fair compensation." "The offer was fair," Holloway insisted. "Not according to the independent assessor who visited yesterday," Judge Harmon countered. "His valuation puts the Dawson property at 8 times your offer, Mr. Holloway." Shock registered on Holloway's face, quickly replaced by calculation. Flynn shifted impatiently, clearly itching for confrontation rather than negotiation. "This delay is costing thousands in construction expenses," Holloway argued. "Then pay me what my land is worth," Helena stated simply. The standoff continued for several tense moments. Logan could feel the mood of the crowd shifting in their favor. Even Benton looked uncomfortable with how public the confrontation had become. Finally, Holloway's businessman instincts prevailed. "Perhaps we can discuss revised terms, Mrs. Dawson. Shall we say $4,000? "The assessor valued it at 5,000, she countered. Holloway's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. 5,000 then. I'll have the papers drawn up immediately. I'll review them before Mrs. Dawson signs anything, Judge Harmon interjected. The tension in the air dissipated slowly. Flynn looked almost disappointed as Holloway signaled for his men to stand down. "This isn't over, right?" Flynn muttered as he passed. "Yes, it is," Logan replied quietly, "unless you want to face a federal investigation into your activities in Colorado and Wyoming. Judge Harmon has those affidavits too." As Holloway and his entourage retreated to the hotel, the townsfolk converged around Helena and Logan, many offering belated support, others simply curious about the outcome. Through it all, Logan was conscious of Helena beside him, her hand somehow finding its way into his as they fielded questions and congratulations. "You did it," she said when they finally had a moment alone. "We did it," Logan corrected. "You stood your ground when it mattered most." Helena looked up at him, her eyes bright. "What happens now, that depends," Logan said, suddenly unsure. "With the money from the sale, you could go anywhere, start fresh like you said. Is that what you want me to do?" She asked, her voice barely audible over the bustle of the dispersing crowd. "No," Logan admitted, "but what I want doesn't matter. This is about what's best for you and Charlotte." Helena smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "Charlotte has grown quite fond of you, you know. She told me last night that she thought you were the bravest man in Sweetwater, not a fool at all." "High praise indeed," Logan said, his heart swelling with unexpected emotion. "I've grown fond of you too," Helena continued, her cheeks coloring slightly, "despite my best efforts not to." "Helena," Logan began, then stopped, searching for the right words. "I know it's too soon. I know there's Jacob's memory to consider and what people will say." She silenced him by squeezing his hand. "I'll always love Jacob, but he would want Charlotte and me to be happy. And as for what people say," she glanced around at the town that had so recently shunned her, "I find I care less about that than I once did." "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that I don't want to leave Sweetwater," Helena clarified, "not when the reasons to stay have become so compelling." Hope bloomed in Logan's chest. "I would never try to replace Jacob in your heart or in Charlotte's memories." "No one could," Helena agreed, "but perhaps there's room for new memories, new beginnings." Charlotte approached then, ending their private conversation. "Mama, Mr. Wright, is it true? Are the bad men going away?" Logan knelt to the girl's level. "Yes, Charlotte, your mama stood up to them and they decided it was better to be fair than to be bullies." Charlotte beamed. "Does that mean you'll come to dinner again? Mama makes the best apple pie when you visit." Logan glanced up at Helena, who was blushing furiously. "Does she now? She says it's because you appreciate good cooking, but I think it's because she likes to see you smile." "Charlotte," Helena admonished, mortified. Logan stood, laughing. "I would be honored to come to dinner if I'm invited." "You are," Helena confirmed, recovering her composure. "Tonight, if you're free." As they walked together toward Helena's wagon, with Charlotte skipping ahead, Logan felt the weight of the past few weeks lifting. The future stretched before them, uncertain but full of promise. "They'll still talk, you know," he said quietly. "The town gossips." Helena slipped her arm through his. "Let them. I've discovered something important these past weeks." "What's that?" Her eyes met his, filled with newfound certainty. "That some things are worth being called a fool for." 6 months later, as winter settled over Sweetwater, Logan stood before the fireplace in his ranch house, nervously straightening his tie. Marcus watched with barely concealed amusement. "You look fine," his foreman assured him. "Stop fussing before you wear a hole in that new suit." "It's not every day a man gets married," Logan replied, checking his pocket watch for the third time in as many minutes. "Especially not a fool like me," Marcus laughed. "Happiest fool I've ever seen." The small ceremony at the church had been perfect. Helena radiant in a simple blue dress, Charlotte beaming as she carried flowers, Reverend Collins officiating before a congregation that included most of Sweetwater. Even Sheriff Benton had attended, though he'd left immediately after the service. Holloway was long gone, having departed for Denver after the railroad negotiations concluded. Flynn and his men had disappeared as well. Their services no longer required once Holloway realized the tide of public opinion had turned against him. With her settlement money, Helena had expanded her farm's operations, hiring help to manage the increased production. She donated a portion to help establish Sweetwater's first proper school, earning back much of the community's respect in the process. Now, as wedding guests filled Logan's home soon to be Helena and Charlotte's home, as well, he could scarcely believe how much had changed in half a year. "There you are," Helena said, appearing in the doorway. "Hiding from your own wedding celebration." "Just catching my breath," Logan replied, drinking in the sight of her. "You look beautiful," she crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. "Charlotte has fallen asleep in your study. All the excitement wore her out. I'll carry her to her room later." Helena's eyes softened. "She's so happy, Logan. We both are. So am I." He drew her closer. "Though I still can't quite believe you agreed to marry the town troublemaker." "Former troublemaker," Helena corrected with a smile. "You're practically respectable now." It was true. The successful stand against Holloway had transformed Logan's reputation from foolish agitator to principled citizen. The railroad had come through as planned, but on terms that benefited the entire community, not just the powerful interests. "We should rejoin our guests," Helena said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. In a moment, Logan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I just want to remember this, how perfect everything is right now." "It won't always be perfect," Helena said practically. "There will be challenges, I know," Logan smiled, "but we'll face them together." A commotion from the main room caught their attention, laughter and the sound of a fiddle starting up. "Sounds like the dancing's begun," Logan observed. Helena tugged at his hand. "Then let's not miss it." "I believe you promised me the first dance, Mr. Wright." "And every dance after that, Mrs. Wright," he replied, following her into their future. As they moved among their friends and neighbors, Logan caught snippets of conversation, most approving, some still tinged with lingering doubt about the wisdom of their match. But it didn't matter anymore. The town could call him what they wanted. He had fought for what mattered, stood firm when it would have been easier to step aside, and found love when he least expected it. If that made him a fool, then he was indeed the happiest fool alive.